1. I'm a service engineer for a business appliance, ATM, self-checkout, and others type company. In most of our contracts, normal wear and tear parts are covered. However, if a customer asks for them to be replaced, or insists it's a physical issue, it's not covered and pay the $150 plus an hour for the parts. I won't go into extreme detail. However, the issue arose with the cash resupply people not following the program sheet to refill the machine and entering the wrong information. Main story. I went out to a machine that is normally pretty quiet, not many issues, and is well maintained by on-site staff. I went over the hardware slowly, enjoying the AC as I couldn't fathom returning quickly to the heat of the southern sun. After verifying the hardware was good and checking the software and find no issues, I called into the customer to ask what they see when the issue started and what's been happening. I'm given a short history and asked to re-enter the cash amounts. I follow along, and to no avail, the machine is still not working. I'm now 3 hours into a call where I normally take an hour, including drive time. No clue what's going on. I copy the log files and email them to our engineer support team, and call the customer call center when the filing conversation takes place. Hi, this is OP calling about the machine number. I have copied the logs and have engineering support looking at them, and will return when they review them. The customer rep then says, "Wait, why are you looking at the logs? Who said you can copy them?" We don't require approval to export log files as we are the servicing provider. Well, I'm looking at this machine and it's showing the hardware is faulted. Maybe instead of letting you level 1 people take such an advanced task, you should contact your level 2. Thanks, so to clarify, you want a level 2 to do what exactly? I'm asking as the team's senior level 2. You need to contact a better level 2 and replace any parts that affect this issue. The entire dispenser is faulted. Okay. You know where this goes, right? On hand, I had 8 parts I could replace. But I called everyone in my team. I wanted every part of this older machine we have available. I then filed a form that allows us to receive part of the billing as a bonus. And I replaced individual parts from wiring to control boards over 10 hours. Patched software, new parts. The bill had to be pretty high at this point, and the issue persists. I had the logs reviews and got back that cash resupply team had put the wrong type of cash. Should be $10 and they entered $50. I called back in and was not surprised that it was the same rep as last time. I informed him of what was found in the logs and asked him to force the correct type from his side. He put me on hold for 15 minutes and asked in an irritating tone, "You need to fix the hardware." I informed him the entire unit was new, the software updated, and he needs to do as I ask. He insisted again that the dispenser had a hardware fault. So I hung up and called back, getting someone in another country, and I asked him to check. Not surprised, he said there is no history of hardware issues in a week. I took to repeating my request, and within a few minutes the machine was working just fine. I got an email from someone in the billing department asking me to contact them immediately. We went over what was asked, and said, after some time they told me that the account manager will not approve billing this call, so I called my boss and was asked to mute my phone. My boss patched the account manager into the call and asked him why he won't bill the call. "Why do you think my area needs to absorb the cost of this repair?" "Your engineer was rude and replaced too many parts." "Do you have proof?" "The rep sent an email." "With proof of him being rude?" "I trust my customer reps. We don't need proof. I've already sent an email to HR for dismissal." I could physically feel my manager's anger. The line disconnected, and I got a call from my boss's boss a few hours later to ask about the events leading to the end of service task. The customer rep call center was billed almost $80,000, as their customer, the bank, who owned this machine, billed for time out of service to both the call center and the cash resupply agency. I had a bonus today over my usual 80-hour plus 40 hours OT usual paycheck. Also, that account manager's email is now grey in my inbox, so I'm sure he was let go for some odd reason. 2. Early last year, I started working as a contractor supporting one of the many government agencies here in the US. My job description was pretty simple. Act as administrative support for a particular federal employee. In effect, I'm a glorified secretary. I push papers, schedule, and file things, and act as a gopher whenever necessary. The job wasn't particularly difficult, but it really helped that the Fed and I got along like a house on fire. The problem is the Fed I worked for doesn't get along with another Fed who works in the same office. Their job descriptions have nothing to do with each other, and there is really very little need for them to interact with each other. But for some reason, which I still don't know, there was bad blood between them. Cue the pandemic. Our office went from a steady workload to a minimum telework position. And just like that, there was no work for the contractors to do. No more pushing papers, no more scheduling or filing things, and no more acting as a gopher. Just long days sitting in my cubicle, reading Reddit on my phone. The Fed I support decides that we'll take the opportunity to clean out 2 offices in another building that haven't been used in years, so they can be repurposed. They'd sat idle for years because no one wanted to clean them. These rooms are filthy with electronics that were old in the 90s, old break room food, cables everywhere, the works. As we get started, I'm happy to be there, as cleaning these rooms means I finally have something to do. Better yet, the Fed I worked for was right there with me, elbow deep in the garbage. After the first day, we have made solid progress on one of the rooms, but it took 8 hours of hard labor to get there. I go back to my cubicle to gather my things to go home, and find the other Fed waiting for me.
Where have you been all day?
I've been in the other building helping my Fed clean out the room.
That's not in your job description. You don't need to be helping this person do that.
I really don't mind. It's better than sitting around on the government's dime doing nothing, and besides, my job is to support this person. If they want me to help clean out a room, I'm more than happy to help.
No, you can't be doing that. If it's not in your job description, then it's not your job. This Fed should know better than to take advantage of your good nature and make you do work you weren't hired for.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to take that up with my Fed. As far as I know, my job is to support this person in whatever way they need, including physical labor.
We'll see about that.
The next day, my Fed and I go to the other building to work. We're 10 minutes into cleaning when the other Fed shows up with a member of the union in tow. The Fed then rips into my Fed for forcing me to do work outside of the scope of my duties, and brought the union representative to back up his opinion. The funny thing was, the union rep had no idea what he was doing there. Neither my Fed nor I are members of the union, and his opinion really had nothing to do with the situation. The other Fed brought him to use as a prop. To his credit, he seemed to know that because he just gave us an uncomfortable shrug with a look like, "I have no idea why I'm here either," and said nothing at all. Rather than fight about it, my Fred surrenders gracefully, and the 2 of us reluctantly leave the uncleaned rooms behind. A week later, I was sent home after guidance came down from Washington, saying there was no work being done. Contractors were no longer needed to support the Feds on staff until the pandemic ended. I sat home for about a day before getting a call from my company telling me another division needed me. This would be a permanent change of office, and as long as I didn't mind the risk of COVID, I could start immediately. Fast forward several months to November. I'm happily working away in my new office when the Fed who had a problem with my helping clean the rooms comes in to speak with some of the employees in my new office. This person is absolutely livid because the 2 rooms had finally been reassigned, but still needed to be cleaned before they could be turned over to their new owners. This Fed was called in to work specifically to clean the rooms, despite still being on maximum telework status, because there was no one else they could call. All of the contractors who had supported them had already been reassigned, and there was nothing in this person's job description that said they couldn't be assigned to this particular duty. Apparently, it took almost 2 weeks of back-breaking labor to clean out the rooms until they were good enough to transfer. The best part was, this person seems to have completely forgotten what part I had to play in this little drama. Because when they came to my office to complain about the injustice of it all to anyone who would listen, they stood right in front of my desk to do so. I got to hear every word of his story right from the horse's mouth. 3. Many years ago, my now ex-wife and I decided to upgrade from the small single-story home we were in and find something with more space for us to spread out. We had her late-teen son living with us, our 3 Rottweilers, plus I needed a dedicated study for my work. I'm in technology and often work from home. After 3 months of searching, we found our dream home. Beautiful 2-story 4-bedroom plus study with huge amounts of space everywhere. Seriously huge. The laundry was bigger than my bedroom growing up. The quality of everything was amazing. Square set walls, no cornices, polished Tassie oak flooring, floor-to-high ceiling windows in living areas, and 2 walls comprising commercial-grade bistro doors that opened up an entire corner of the house onto the covered outdoor entertaining area. The standard of the build was no surprise. This was a display home, up until it landed on the market. We were to be the first people to live in it. I'm going to gloss over months of details and pain, but we had problems with the place from day 2, literally. On night 2, the plumbing under the ensuite shower gave out and leaked through the kitchen ceiling underneath it. A couple weeks later, during a monster storm, 3 of the light fixtures upstairs started leaking water. A month later, we noticed rust starting to show through the rendering on the corners of the house. There were heaps of smallish, easy-to-fix problems. But the kicker was that the balcony adjoining the master bedroom at the front of the house actually started to sag down, to the point that it was unsafe to go out there due to the risk of collapse. We were mostly amenable and nice through most of this. The vendor, also the builder of course, was a small business, and we had no interest in making his life any more difficult than it already was for a small business owner. But conversely, we were pouring a lot of our hard-earned into the mortgage, and we wanted what we paid for. But for his own reasons, the builder just kept making it difficult to get things fixed. There was a seemingly endless list of excuses for not turning up at agreed times, a non-stop torrent of blame directed at his subcontractors, and just plain shitty behavior, like dodging our calls and not responding to our emails. Of course, we started proceedings with our state's Consumer Affairs Department. After all, we were entitled to a statutory 7-year warranty on our new home. But that process takes time. Time throughout which we were forced to endure issues like water leaks, a dangerous balcony we couldn't use, and a whole host of other issues that meant we weren't enjoying our home. There shouldn't have been any dispute about his responsibility to fix these problems. He just chose to be a dick about it, and make us go through the government process, presumably thinking we would give up before he was forced to do anything. At around the same time, we started getting the occasional knock at the door, only to open it and find a couple standing there with a brochure in their hands, and our house pictured on the front. The first few of these conversations ended with us politely explaining that this was no longer a display house, it was our home. Without exception, they all apologized profusely and went away. After a month or so of this, I started to wonder, how was it that people still thought our house was a display home? I went looking, and discovered that the builder's website still had our address listed for display. Despite repeated calls and emails, they steadfastly refused to remove our address from their website. This irritated the shit out of me. These people would often come knocking on weekends because that's when people go house shopping, right? But our pleas for the builder to update his site simply fell on deaf ears. Enough was enough. An idea had formed. Did I mention I was in technology? First thing I did was scrape their website and set about the task of creating my own version of it, using their exact look and feel. I highlighted every single problem we found with the place. Every glamour shot was replaced with shots of the exact same feature, but showing the problems we had. Rust showing through the rendering, water leaking from the light fixtures, close-ups of the sagging balcony, etc. You get the idea. By the time I was done, I had what I felt like was the perfect alternate version of their site. One that highlighted every single defect in the home, as well as calling out all the problems we had in dealing with the builder. I even included testimonials that were simply copies of the bullshit emails and texts we received from the builder, avoiding his responsibilities and making lame excuses for not fixing our problems. The headline testimonial was the one where he responded with, "So just don't go out in the balcony," when I pointed out the clear safety risk it represented. After getting a lawyer friend to check through each page to make sure I wasn't opening myself up to some form of legal action, he helped me change a few sections, chuckling the whole time. I put the site up for hosting on some cheap and cheerful hosting provider Google told me about. Offshore, of course. I also registered a close but not close enough to be sued domain name to reach it. The next step was to create some actual collateral for execution of my plan. After all, there was no point in going to all this effort unless I was actually able to direct people to the builder's website. So I took a copy of the brochure for our house, that the builder had conveniently left a few behind in one of the kitchen drawers, and set about creating my own version of it. Similar principles as the website, no contact information except the website address, my website address. By this time, I'd made good friends with a few of my neighbors, and we'd taken to sharing a beer or two most nights on our front lawns. And wouldn't you know it, one of them was a manager for a local print shop. Given he already knew what hell we'd been through with the builder, he took very little convincing to print off a run of my brochure for me, on a beautiful paper stock, nice and glossy. Professional. I think it cost me a half-dozen beers. Then came the final step in my plan. I waited. I waited for eager couples to turn up on my doorstep, eyes wide open in wonder at the beauty of the home they were going to pay the builder for their very own copy of. For the next 6 months or so, whenever one of these couples would turn up and knock on my door and explain their purpose, I'd let them know that this model home was selling so quickly that the builder had asked if I could hand out his updated brochure, so potential buyers could go online and look up whatever the current display home address was. I don't know how many brochures I handed out of the 100 my neighbor printed for me. I probably only had 2 or 3 dozen left, but I know I also handed out a bunch to mates so they could have a laugh. I'd estimate close to 40 prospective buyers got a copy of my brochure, and I reckon at least 15 to 20 of those came back to thank me for warning them. A few of them had already signed conditional contracts and managed to get out of them one way or another. I don't know what happened to that builder in the end. I split up with the missus not too long after, and she sold the place not too long after that. At the time of writing this, the builder's website is gone. The domain still appears to be registered in the company's name, and their state business registration still appears to be active. As best I can tell, he's no longer at the last known address for the company, and I can't find any mention of the company online that isn't at least 6 years old. Hopefully the fucker's out of business now, and hopefully the few dozen people I helped sidestep the pain of dealing with him were the beginning of the end of his shitty little enterprise. If you stayed this long, thanks for listening. Cheers. 4. Context. I used to work at a Kroger deli when I was 19. This would have been 2009. I think I made it 6 months there before they forced me out. That's a longer story with no malicious compliance in it, unfortunately. This specific Kroger had the bakery, the fried chicken station, and the deli under one section. In this store, we had a 3-tiered management system for hourlies. There was your department lead, the supervisor, and the manager. The way it's supposed to work is that supervisors and managers report any sort of problems with the hourlies to the department lead, and they take it up with them unless it's something serious. So that way, if either the management or supervisor are confused about a certain procedure, the lead can explain it to them without the hourly getting needlessly harassed. So I worked second shift, and I mostly maintained the fried chicken area because I was the only one on second shift who actually enjoyed doing it. Closing down the department started between 9 and 9:30, and took around 3.5 hours. It would take closer to an hour and a half if the morning shifters would do their closing routines for the shift change. But they didn't, and we get left with a fuckload of extra work and a fuckload of dishes. Didn't really bother me. I was young and the overtime pay was welcome. Didn't really do anything else with my time anyways. Now some bonus context. Kroger is unionized, and they had this: if you work over a certain amount of hours in a 6-week period, you're immediately full-time with benefits. And they wanted as little full-time employees as possible. So normally I'd get weeks where I only work 1 day because of the extra 3 hours we end up being there. This particular set of weeks we had 2 people quit, and the newbies brought in to replace them were fired. One called off because she got her wisdom teeth removed, and they fired her for that. Shameless. So I landed myself in a precarious position where I was about to be given full-time, but they really didn't want me to. So my manager pulls me aside and says, "Hey, you guys gotta stop messing around back there. You take too long to close and we're starting to get corporate breathing down our necks." After explaining our situation and how we literally do almost all the morning shift's work throughout the day, I was told that if I couldn't get the work done on time, then I wouldn't be working here. Now, this is a big no-no for 2 reasons. One, as stated above, manager and supervisor are not supposed to interact with hourlies, as they generally have no idea what our job entails. I've been written up for not filling empty slots of the package called chicken items when none were made for me by the morning shift. They took 8 hours to properly prepare. Reason 2 is that you do not threaten your employees, especially the ones who comply maliciously. 10 p.m. is my new designated out time. The chicken station worker is the last out because cleaning the rotisserie oven is a big fat bitch. And even still, the other 2 stations don't finish up until 11:30ish. After we close at 9, and I reveal to my cohorts I have been instructed to leave at 10, lest I get full time and the wrath of management, the other 2 start to bitch about having to finish my work, when I intercept them with, "No, those aren't your responsibilities. After I leave, it's morning shift's problem. They can pitch to the manager if they have a problem with how I leave it." And that's exactly how it goes. Manager comes down to tell me about getting morning shift's complaints about the condition of the kitchen, asking me why it was left like that, to which I explained that my newly defined curfew that he had issued caused me to miss a few things. I was written up, and I kept doing it and kept getting written up, until getting fired for completely unrelated reasons. I would start a whole new 6-week rotation and still leave at exactly 10 p.m. Kitchen a fucking mess. Same excuse every time. Even though he told me not to leave until the kitchen was clean again, I left at 10 p.m. I complied too hard that it became a no-take-backseat situation. And to anyone wondering why I got fired, gal I worked with had a nightmare that I had sexually assaulted her, and she felt uncomfortable working with me. And instead of management moving this crazy bitch, I was given the boot for being the aggressor in this situation. Yes, her depiction of Dream Me is the aggressor between the 2 of us. 5. I used to work on a cruise ship. If you remember back at the height of COVID, I was the American that was trapped on the ship that they wouldn't let me re-enter the country. Did a big AMA. In my job, I was paid a daily set rate, regardless of how many hours I worked. If I worked 4 hours, great. If I worked 12 hours, not so great. I managed the children's facilities. It was a great job on the low-hour days. I'd go on lots of complimentary tours via the ship, go parasailing, swim with sea lions, salsa dance classes, dog sledding in Alaska, snorkeling in the Pacific Islands, etc., etc. There was a long-standing issue with the company where if people needed extra hands, they'd come to the children's club and grab us. After all, we did no actual work. We colored and watched Disney movies all day. This really annoyed me, because I did not get hired to run bingo, decorate the ship's common areas for Halloween, run sports for adults. I was hired to be the manager of the children's area. Very early on in my tenure, I shot a message to corporate, with a list of activities that ship management was trying to force on me. Corporate came back with a lovely list of tasks I could and could not be forced to do. From then on, whenever I'd be asked to do something, I'd pull out my handy-dandy corporate override email, as I called it, and would squash the extra expectations. There is a process on days where the ship cannot park directly at port. The ship anchors down a distance away from the island, and then sends tender boats, lifeboats, with passengers to the island. Each tender can fit 75 people, 150 in an emergency. Historically, guest services, the front desk of the ship, would run tendering in conjunction with entertainment, which I fell under. They'd set up a table in a public area and pass out tender tickets to guests. Without a ticket, you can't get off the ship. This solves the problem of everyone trying to stand in line down hallways and clogging staircases. Some of us would work the table, passing out numbers. Some would stand around and provide general instructions. Some would be posted at key points around the ship to direct traffic. The children's club staff would inevitably have to get up at the crack of dawn to work these tendering shifts. My staff member or I would work, for example, 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. tendering, 11:45 a.m. to 4:15 p.m. kids club, then 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. kids club. That is a very long day. Plus, if it was your day off, only having to work at night, you'd miss being able to go on most tours as they all start fairly early. The entertainment manager would buy us a nice latte from the ship cafe as a thank you and apology. Then, hallelujah! Guest services was supposed to take the whole thing over. Emails were sent out, duties were reassigned. I diligently printed the email and added it stapled to the back of my corporate override email. But it didn't stop them. They kept asking me to come work extra tendering shifts for them. The first time I agreed because I am a team player, but I told the entertainment manager that I was still expecting a coffee as payment. Guest services manager agreed. I rock up at 5:45 a.m., asked for the code to charge my coffee under, to be told that I can just have the regular guest coffee from the station they set up. I was seething. The next shift, they did not ask. They just assumed I'd show up. I didn't show up because they didn't ask. It's not in my job description. And they shafted me on coffee the week before. They called me at 6:30 a.m. when I had gotten off at midnight the night before. I'm not tendering today. Click and roll over. More furious emails, but they hadn't asked me, so how could I have known to show up? It's their job now. The next week, they tried to book us in advance. I said, I'm scheduled for a tour. The tour department on board would give out free tours to crew, with an emphasis on crew that volunteered to help them. Assist in putting together the brochures, a weekly task, more likely to get a tour. They also asked that you arrive to the ship meeting place 20 to 30 minutes early to help with traffic control. They sent my manager a furious email back and forth. It escalated to corporate again. They felt it wasn't fair that they had to run it by themselves. I felt it wasn't fair to make my staff work extra hours when we're paid a pittance to begin with. Corporate fired back with, if staff are free, they should help out in this particular task to be good team members. If staff are working or assisting around the ship in some capacity, they do not have to help tender. I stapled that to my file. Cue malicious compliance. I gathered my team. At dinner that night we went to eat early, so we'd catch the shore excursions team. They were a great bunch of people and had heard about our tendering woes, and more importantly, how I'd been shafted on the coffee. That really burned me up. Shore tours manager. I'll make you a deal. What if you guys just come help us every tender day? You'll get your tour, we'll get help, and we'll even throw in cafe coffee. Done deal. The next tendering day, my two staff went to help the tour team, while I worked the children's club. Staff member A got to go on a tour that day, swim with dolphins, while staff member B got hers deferred to the next off afternoon, tequila tasting. I get an angry call at 8 in the morning on the children's club phone. It's guest services. Why aren't your staff here? You're all up in the children's club right now. I am currently working and my staff are currently assisting elsewhere on the ship. Sorry. Someone from guest services showed up to the kids' club. But we need you to help, the supervisor whined. I handed her my growing file of things Lime Time won't do, and told her to check the last page about working or assisting elsewhere. After that, they'd still call us every week to complain we weren't helping, and every week we'd fire back with, sorry, we're assisting in another capacity, as per corporate. They stopped calling me directly because we weren't getting anywhere. They called my manager, Shore's tour manager, the big bad hotel manager, basically third in control of the entire ship. It went nowhere. I had the email from corporate, and I was following it to a T. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 84. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their story in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do boop the like button and leave a comment. And if you're already subscribed, then if you'd be so kind as to share the video around with your friends, family, and that guy named Bob that works in the grocery store. He's good people, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Right, this goes up on Thursday. Oh yeah, busy day for me today. I'm not going to get a lot of sleep. I'm waiting on a plumber coming. Hopefully they'll have arrived by the time you hear this. Waiting on a plumber coming, and I don't know what time they'll arrive, because apparently it's all day. So I'm not going to sleep while I wait for them to arrive. I just hope they can fix the damn problem. Because it's obvious to me, but... Okay, enough grumbling from me. I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.